Have you ever picked up a literature guide for a book that you're reading in your homeschool only to find out that this literature guide is so rich and includes so many connections and includes so many things to do that you just kind of end up not doing it, that it ends up not happening, or your child ends up kind of complaining that they don't enjoy reading this book anymore because there's just so much work involved in completing the literature guide that goes with it? If so, then you might just want to give these literature guides a try. From Seven and All. I am a second generation homeschooler. I love to chat about all the nerdy homeschool things here on YouTube, and I also create homeschool curriculum together with my family and sell it on my website, Where'd You Learn That? Homeschool. We have recently begun offering a series of literature guides, and I am going to take you on a flip through and look inside two of these literature guides today. These literature guides were designed in a very particular style. They are not the meatiest literature guides you will ever find. They are not the richest. They are not the kind that are trying to milk every ounce of learning out of the book that you're reading. This is very intentional. I love reading. And sometimes I feel like as homeschoolers and as educators, when we try to beat a book to death with learning activities, it kind of takes the joy out of reading it. However, I still think that literature guides can be helpful. I still think that discussions and doing work with what we've read can be helpful. Reading comprehension can be an issue for many students. So these literature guides were directly created with the idea of giving your child the scaffolding, giving your reader the scaffolding and the tools that they need to really get more out of the story, however, without beating the story to death, without making it all that much work beyond just reading the book. I hope that you'll be able to see that as we dive into these reader guides. Every guide is not exactly the same. The format and the focuses are going to change depending on the genre of the book, the level of difficulty in the book, the individual features of the book itself. I am someone who loves writing and loves to point out some of what is the author doing. You are going to see that in these guides, and I'm going to show you two of them today. Right now, this is an ongoing series. We have about 6 titles on our website right now. The 7th will be coming soon. I know that realistically we need to have like 30 to 50 titles available to give you lots and lots of choices. They're coming, but they'll take a little bit of patience. But let's see what we have. All right, first I will be walking you through our literature guide for The Witch of Blackbird Pond. In our book choices, I am trying to do a variety of books, both old classic homeschool standbys that you see on many curriculum lists, as well as a few books that are a little bit more non-traditional, but well worth studying. I'll show you one for example. You don't often see mystery books, mystery novels included on literature lists necessarily, but this is a genre that has been incredibly influential in our world. Agatha Christie is one of the top best-selling novelists of all time. So it's worth studying. This is her very first novel. This also takes place during World War I, so it could be tied into a 20th century world history year and theme. That's just an explanation why I do choose a few not so traditional titles. I am also open to requests, so if you have any requests for specific titles, go ahead and leave them in the comments. But here is one of our more traditional titles. The Witch of Blackbird Pond is a historical fiction novel. We start each unit with a note to the student. This one amused me. Prepare yourself to adventure back in time into a world where people judged each other by the type of clothing they wore and the sort of house they lived in, where people who chose to live differently from the norm were looked upon with suspicion and distrust. In this time, differences of opinion over politics could turn a friendly dinner into a tense argument in no time at all. Oh wait, have things changed all that much in the 300 years since this story took place? I amused myself with writing that one. But if you know this book, you know that it's a cross-cultural story where a young girl from Barbados, who is raised in Barbados, comes to live with her Puritan relatives and also comes into contact with a Quaker woman. And this is very much tied into the history of Connecticut at this point in time. So we always start with a background information page. Here we have info on the author, the genre, the award that this received, and then I also have further info links. Whenever I have links for videos or songs or articles, I try to put all of those links in this front background information page because I know you're probably going to be printing this for your student, and it can be hard to find a link in the document in 20 pages or so. So I try to keep all links right here, and I'll sometimes refer you to saying, hey, you can check out this link back on the background information page or page 4. So that's just info for you right there. And I highly recommend don't skip this. For students, don't skip this. Background information is very helpful. Now, for each chapter is typically going to be just one page of work. You'll have a short before you read section followed by an after you read section. Before you read is typically going to have any specific vocabulary that might help you to understand the story better. There might be some other contextual knowledge or geography connections to place where in the world is this story happening. Then you're going to have an after you read section, and that is where your student will be answering questions based on what they read. This is where their comprehension will be tested or assessed. And I do include an answer guide. The answer guide pages are all the way in the back, so if you don't want to give those to your student, you can just hand them all the student sheets, keep the answer guide for yourself. And the answer guide only includes the actual factual answers. If it's a question more of what do you think about this decision that a character made, something like that, you're not going to have an answer in the answer key for that. And again, we have a great deal of vocabulary here. Then here, sometimes I'll have gray boxes, and those will be different commentaries or insets on something that the characters are going through. They might also be writer's notes, bringing to light literary conventions or writing techniques that are being used. So here we're just giving some context about a conversation between two of the main characters and conflict between two of them. And there's just some short questions to answer. This is not drudgery. This is not meant to be tedious or take a long time. So in this example, in this chapter, we actually do get a writer's note where we point out to the fact that the writer in the first 2 chapters of the book never explained the situation that our heroine is in. We got hints or clues, but only in chapter 3 it's revealed why is she doing what she's doing. Why did she have to leave Barbados? We find it out only in chapter 3. And I invite the student to think, what do you think is the effect of waiting until chapter 3? Here in the writer's note, we bring up the literary device of metaphor and talk about that literary device. Here we also have an action, an activity invitation. Do it. Kit, our main character, is dealing with issues of having to work at jobs she's never been expected to do before and being shocked at the amount of work that her relative's lifestyle contains. And we invite the student to think about the work that your family needs done around the home and the skills needed to do those jobs. We bring up an idiom, an unusual idiom that's used in chapter 5. And here we have a think about it section related to a plot point within this story. We have a historical note right here that can help the student to understand. I do, especially in the historical fiction books, I sometimes include pictures because sometimes it can just help to help the student to picture what is it exactly that that's being referenced here. So the historical figure Anne Bradstreet is referenced in this chapter, as well as a gambrel roof. So here I included a picture of a gambrel roof. Since they're talking about this, it might be nice to know, what does that look like? Then we talk about point of view. Again, I just have short questions that have a variety, but invite the student to engage in different ways. And then here we have a picture of another historical figure who shows up, and his appearance matters for the plot of the story. So I find it helpful to actually have a portrait of this character because he was a real character. Each literature guide ends with an option for three options for completing a final project. And I'll show you that in this one. So this is the literature guide for The Fellowship of the Ring. It is quite a bit longer than The Witch of Blackbird Pond, just because the book is, 4 times the size of that book. So this will have more pages. All of my literature guides are the same price, $3.49 on my website. Again, we have our background information page, and we also have a number of song links for the page. Song is a very important part of Tolkien's book, and sometimes it can really help to hear the songs actually being sung versus reading them in a book. Some very talented people have put songs from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series to music, and so we include links so that the student can actually hear these as they might have been sung by the hobbits and their friends. So, as usual, you'll see the same pattern before you read, after you read. The Fellowship of the Ring is a little bit more of a challenging book. You're going to see a little bit more challenging vocabulary and have a few more involved assignments with this one. This has a higher level of complexity in the writing, but we have also very simple assignments. So here we create a bullet point history of the One Ring. So this is the number of main events in the history of the One Ring up until this point. And you can we're helping you to wrap your mind around the plot of what's happened with inviting you to create this bullet point history. And here we have chapter 3. This one didn't have any vocabulary words, but we also have a writer's note about the feature that this is a totally fictional world. It's a fantasy world, and yet it has elm trees and fir trees and foxes. It has some familiar plants and animals, and we talk about what is the effect of that. Why would an author choose to fill their world with some plants and animals that we are familiar with? We talk about that, and then here I point you toward listening to that song link from the background information page. Sometimes we also just include a little personal connections, funny little moments to break it up. Do you like mushrooms? Because mushrooms is a big part of this chapter. Chapter 6, the Old Forest, is a little bit non-traditional. You have the opportunity for 2 different options. One is a short writing assignment, and one is a drawing or art assignment. And then your child will do it on a separate piece of paper when you have this type of activity. In the House of Tom Bombadil, you get to see what do you learn about Tom Bombadil from reading about the hobbits' stay in their house. We analyze the hobbits' characters right here, that they are not career heroes, but they have accidentally found themselves on this quest. We also talk about Tolkien's habit of spending a lot of time describing the journey in detail and the effect of this, instead of just moving from action scene to action scene. Here we address the fact that the song being sung at the sign of the Prancing Pony is mentioned in the book to have come down to us in modern day in the form of a nursery rhyme. So we address what is that nursery rhyme, and then we talk about this connection with history and time that Tolkien is making by basically claiming that Bilbo Baggins wrote the original song behind the nursery rhyme, The Cow Jumped Over the Moon. So that's quite a clever bit of writing he did there. Then in this chapter, we are doing a poem annotation activity, and we go step by step by step. We're going to mark up and do a close reading of the poem, and for that purpose I will give you a second sheet of paper with just the poem written in a larger font, but the student has each step to follow on this page. Then here, again, we're pointing you to listening to a song. We talk about unusual adjectives being used. We talk about the fact that some people find the long traveling sequences to be boring, and discuss how do you feel about that? What was the purpose? What was Tolkien's purpose in including these detailed long traveling sequences? Then here we have another, poetry plays a big part in this book. So we do have several poetry exercises. In this poem, in this chapter, Many Meetings, is a ballad, and it can be a little bit confusing for a student to be faced with a long ballad. So here, after the explanation, the activity that you're given is to simply summarize each stanza so that you can figure out, oh, what is happening in this ballad? Because the ballad is telling a story, but for the student, it might get lost in poetic language. But when you can break it down to, okay, just read the first stanza, break it down to one simple, non-poetic sentence and say, what's happening in this stanza? What's happening in this stanza? And again, I have answers in the answer key, which is in the back of the guide if this is ever a struggle. There are more chapters. I didn't show you every single page because it's a long book, but I did want to show you an example of our final project page. We always have 3 options, and the options do change, and they're specific to the book that it is. So this one has sometimes there's a more generic, easier option for those who need that. There is usually some that are much more specific to the story, like this option here. So we have write a book review. Then we have power is a major theme in this book. Then here, choose 5 of the characters in this tale and analyze the way they respond to the power offered by the One Ring. And we give options of characters you might want to choose. And then sometimes we have a non-writing based final project. Some of them are more performance based. This one is an art based activity. Choose one of your favorite scenes from this book to illustrate using the medium of your choice. I hope that it was helpful for you to get a real look inside these guides that we offer. Of course, each one has quite a bit of variety depending on the book that it is, and we do have a number of books available on the website already. We have Carry On, Mr. Bowditch. We have Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. We have Bronze and Sunflower, which is a novel by a Chinese author. So we do have a variety of books available right now, and hopefully many more coming soon. So if you do have a request, leave it in the comments for me. I make no promises, but it is very helpful to know what kind of books you all are looking for literature guides for. And I do want to mention, head to my website, because for each and every title, I do have rough grade level estimations as well as theme connections. So when you might want to incorporate different books, I will have a list of several themes that the book connects to, whether that is a history cycle or a certain topic or theme in literature, a certain cultural connection, folktale connection. I have all of those themes listed out to help you make good choices for your homeschool. All right, if you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.